Hello, my name is Anya, and today we are going to use the same pop-up for both creating and editing a thing. The first thing I'm going to do is show you the database. I created a thing of type house, and I gave it all of these different fields. But I want to make a new field that will show the user the style of the house. But I want there to only be 3 different styles on my platform. And I want to be able to choose which styles of houses are shown on this platform. So I'm going to create an option set. This just means that there's a predetermined list of styles that can only be altered directly from the bubble editor by the app admin. Now to connect this here, I just make a field style and that type, and it's going to be of type style. Now that this is all set up, let's create a repeating group to display all of this. Since it's displaying houses, this repeating group is going to be of type house, and it's just going to do a search for all of the houses in the database, and it's not going to have a fixed number of rows. I'm going to go ahead and add in visual elements that correspond to the field, so all of the information about the houses are displayed. I went ahead and did that. Now I also want to add a button to create a listing, as, as well as a button to edit the current one. All of this can be made a lot more aesthetically pleasing, but right now I'm not really focusing on that. In addition, I also want to create a pop-up, and I'm going to call this pop-up edit/create, or I guess create/edit a listing. Now I'm going to set this up as if we were only doing it to create a listing, and I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Done, but I want to show you how I set up the style, which I want to be a drop down of all of the styles, the 3 style values that I created. I make the type of choices style, as well as the choices source all style, just all of the styles that I created. And then I want to do current options display, which is basically just a fancy word for the name of an option set. I also made sure I clicked this box for all of the inputs. It just means that the input should not be empty. Now let's add some logic. I'm going to add a workflow to this create button. When it's clicked, I want to create a new thing, type house. And I'm going to fill out all of these fields. I matched them all to the correct input, and now we can close the pop-up. We also need to tie in some logic so that when this button create a listing is clicked, we show the pop-up. Now, if we preview this, we can create a listing, which I'm going to go ahead and do. I filled it out, and you can see it's displayed just as we want. It's not that beautiful, but it works. Now let's set up the logic so that we can edit it. The first thing we're going to do is edit our pop-up. We are going to actually make it so that its type of content is house, and we're going to leave the data source blank. This just means that this pop-up can store and remember a house, and we'll use that house to autofill these fields, which we'll do in a second. But first, we want to make it so that when we click this button, it not only shows the pop-up, it also displays data in the pop-up. And it sends the pop-up the current cell's house. Now we can assume that when the create a listing button is clicked, there is no information that's been sent to this pop-up. But when the edit listings button is clicked, there is. We can use that to give it initial content. We can make it so that it takes the parent group's houses description for the description input field, and the same for the rest, which I'm going to go ahead and do right now. I did that, but we also don't want the heading to read create a listing when we're trying to edit one. So we're going to add in a conditional. We're going to say that when the parent group's house is not empty, when the pop-up has a value in it, we're going to make the text instead edit relisting. We're going to use the same logic for the button. When the house is not empty, we're going to just make it submit. Now we can tie in some logic. This is what we previously made, but now we only want this to happen when the parent group's house is empty. I also forgot to add something in here. We want to reset relevant inputs there, and then we want to reset the data of the whole pop-up. Now we're going to copy paste this, and we're going to make the workflow for when the parent group's house is not empty. Instead of creating a new house, we want to make changes to a thing, and that thing is going to be the parent group's house. I'm going to make the fields and the inputs line up in the same way. Since we preloaded it with the values of the fields for the house, setting it up so that all of the values are changed doesn't really affect anything that the user didn't change. We also need to make sure this happens before we reset all of the inputs, because then we won't have any data to go off of. Now, if we test this out, we can see that we can create a listing and everything shows up as so, but then we can also edit this listing. Let's make it a stunning modern home. With that, we see that the change is reflected, and we were able to utilize the same pop-up to both create and edit a house listing.